Welcome back to the Stay Hype podcast, where I help you heighten your personal experience through my own experience on this earth. I'm your host, Kristen, and we are back with another episode of my new series, No More Suffering in Silence, where I take you guys along my journey to healing my sexual trauma. I want to first say thank you for all of the love and support that I received on these first 3 episodes thus far. I didn't realize how challenging it would be to talk about these stories, and some of the things that I'm talking about on my podcast right now, I haven't really talked about at all, and this is why it's so therapeutic to me. So I just want to say thank you, and I hope that you feel less alone if these episodes have been resonating with you. So you guys know I like to jump right in and just get started. So I want to talk about something that has been coming up for me over the past couple years, to be honest, that I've started to deepen my awareness around. And that is porn. And not just porn itself in general, but the type of movies that I was gravitating and feeling drawn towards while I was learning to self-explore and pleasuring myself, especially in my early 20s and up until, not that long ago, to be honest. And it's something that has brought me a lot of shame, and it's something that I've felt so bad about within myself. But now, the more that I talk about it, the more that I speak about it on my lives, you guys know I go live on TikTok 4 days a week, and I'm very open and very candid there. That's usually the first space where I start talking about a lot of things. It's very healing for me. And so one thing that kept coming up is the type of videos that I was looking up. And if you don't know, if you haven't listened to the first episodes, I was around 12 or 13 when I was sexually assaulted by my mom's boyfriend. And he was around 50. He was in his 50s at that time. And so that was my introduction into sex. That was my first introduction. And because of my age, I just was very confused. I thought that this is what it was supposed to be. I thought that this is what was supposed to be happening. I was just very confused. And so as I grew older and started, pleasuring myself and getting into that self-exploration, I started wanting to watch porn and adult movies. And so I found that when I would watch movies of people of the same age, it would be stimulating, and I could definitely climax from it. I would enjoy it. But I also noticed that I was very drawn towards movies that were titled Old Man, Preteen, or Young Teen, or Stepdad and Stepdaughter. And it brought a lot of shame that I would get so aroused and very, very stimulated from those type of videos. Because that's a crime, right? I got my degree in criminology. I talk so much about, pedophilia, and I wrote so many papers about that and my getting my degree. We see it all the time on the news. It infuriates me when I hear that it happens. If that ever happened to one of my friends' children, I would be so angry. I'd be so upset. But here I am, in the darkness of my room, looking up these type of videos. And I felt so much shame on how much it would actually stimulate me and how quickly I was able to climax once I watched those videos. And I would sit there afterwards and say, what is wrong with me? Why am I looking at this? Why is this something that I'm seeking out? Is this something wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And this was all during the time that I was dissociated from my abuse itself. So I'm not aware of the abuse that I went through. I'm totally not even in the awareness. I'm not even thinking about this is something that's happened to me. And so I'm gravitating towards it because this is what I think is normal. And then, once I started to wake up and I realized and came into my truth about what happened and accepted my truth about what happened and started to navigate, it all made sense. And as I started to talk about it, on my live. If you don't know, I go live on TikTok 4 days a week, and that's where I just really am very candid. I'm very open. The community that we've built is so beautiful and safe, so I feel very comfortable talking about anything there. And I started talking about it, and more people were validating my experience and saying, wow, me too. Wow, I thought I was the only one. Oh, wow, this makes a lot of sense now. And so then I got to the conclusion that I'm not bad or wrong or weird for naturally gravitating towards the abuse that I experienced. It was something that happened to me, and even though consciously I wasn't thinking about it, consciously I didn't remember, my body did not forget. And so I was naturally seeking out something that I had experienced that I thought was natural. And so it brought so much shame, and I constantly was just questioning, what is wrong with me? I'm a bad person. I'm weird. Like, there's something off. And I was right. There was something off, but it had nothing to do with my character, that I was a bad person, and it had everything to do with the abuse that I experienced. So I thought it was so important to talk about this today, because I know so many of you that resonate with my story are also suffering in silence with this truth. There's so many different fantasies, like a really common rape fantasy that a lot of women may have. Or when you watch these certain scenes in movies that are very graphic, very violent, that don't leave anything to the imagination, different rape scenes, we wonder why we kind of like it. We're kind of getting turned on by it, why we're excited for that scene. We know this movie has that scene and it does something. And I couldn't deny the fact that, certain movies that I would watch that had very graphic scenes would get me excited, and I would kind of but feel bad around why I was excited about it, and why I'm telling certain people that I'm dating or that I'm talking to or being sexually active with that I have this rape fantasy, and it's just I want someone to just barge in and grab me and take control of me and grab my hands and all these different things. And then when I'm sitting there and thinking about it, do I really want that? Is that something that's really turning me on? And I know everybody has their own fetishes and their own kinks, and I'm not here to shame and say that if you do think that necessarily means that you've been abused. But in my case, particularly, I know that it came from a place of abuse, because when I'm actually getting honest with myself, being controlled and not having, boundaries and not being able to say no was exactly how I felt emotionally because of the assault. So it makes sense, again, that I would gravitate and say that this is the fantasy that I have to try to normalize what was going on. I was trying to normalize and make it seem like it was okay that I was having these fantasies, because everybody does. This is sexy. This is what everybody wants, and that's not the truth. It's not the truth. And the more that I get honest and start to kind of look at my other experiences thus far, I can see the trauma and why people were acting out certain things with me in the past as well, different partners. It really makes sense on some of the things that some of my partners wanted to watch and wanted to do when things came up to the surface about their experiences and their trauma as well. So I just thought it was really important to talk about this, because I know I'm not the only one. And if this is you, just know that you are not alone, that you are not a bad person, that this is this is something that comes with the trauma. This is something that comes with the trauma. And once you get honest about this and you start speaking about it, it no longer controls you. And you also realize how many people are suffering in silence as well. No one talked to me about sex. I didn't have any conversations with any of my parents, my older sister, like no one. We just didn't talk about it. It wasn't something that we talked about. And so we just don't know what's normal and what's not. And we definitely are not talking about our abuse. It's so underreported. We're not talking about these things. And so we're just holding it in. And then behind closed doors, we're acting out this trauma through the things that we watch and the way that we interact and the type of sex that we're having and the lack of boundaries and not feeling like you're allowed to say no. And I think that being controlled and being taken over by someone who is much older and bigger and stronger than me, it definitely transitioned or stemmed into my voice being silenced. Whenever I would get into situations sexually that I didn't really want to be in, I felt like I couldn't say anything. I felt like I was screaming at the top of my lungs, but it just wouldn't come out. I didn't want to seem stupid. I didn't want to seem prude. I was so worried about the ego of the man. I didn't want to make them upset or make them feel like they weren't enough or make them feel like they weren't good enough. And I understand why I did that. I understand why I did that as a survival tactic. I would freeze. That was my response when it came to sexual trauma. In different situations, I may fight, I may flight, but in sexual situations, when I'm in that intimate situation with someone, I freeze. And this not only goes for, the actual rape or like an intimate situation. I also freeze when it comes to sexual harassment or just groping or touching. I really have reflected on how much growing up, going out to the clubs, walking around town, men just touching, grabbing, pulling, and just being non-reactive to it. I may say like get off or let go, but 9 times out of 10, when I would get groped walking through the club or walking outside, someone would just grab my butt or pull my arm or just hug me without my consent. I didn't think anything of it. I just told myself I would just shove it down and just be like, this is how men are. Like, this is normal, I guess. Like, this is how women are treated. It's fine, whatever. It's fine, I guess, And I really just was numb to it. And now in the last 6 months that I've been really intentionally healing from this and getting honest about my feelings and allowing my inner child, my inner teen, my past self to be completely honest, I have a lot of rage. I have a lot of anger for the ways that I was just touched and groped and hugged without my consent. It really has taught me that I don't like being touched, that me being physical right away with someone, it takes time. I have to feel comfortable. I'm not the person that's hanging all over you and let's hug and let's kiss and do this on the first date. That is not who I am. And I'm no longer ashamed or feel like there's something wrong with me because I need more time to get to know the person before I do that. And I remember feeling so much pressure in relationships to be super affectionate right away. And I remember in one of my relationships, the guy that I was dating, the second date that we had saw each other, because I wasn't super affectionate, he kind of was just like, hey, this is not going to work. If you're not going to, I like being physical. I like touching. And so if this is not where you're at right now, this is probably not going to work. And I remember feeling so bad and so much shame. So I started just forcing it. I started just holding his hand and being on him, even though it was only our second time seeing each other in person. And I was not ready for that. And I shouldn't have to be ready for that, especially so soon. But I remember feeling like I disappointed him. And so I started forcing it because his whole demeanor and attitude changed, and I didn't want him to abandon me. I didn't want him to feel like I didn't care about him. I didn't want him to feel that lack of love. So I just abandoned my own boundaries. I abandoned what felt natural and organic to me in order to appease someone else. And I realized that has been a constant theme in my life when it comes to intimacy and my relationship with men. It's a lot easier for me to set boundaries and say no and say certain things when boundaries are crossed with women. Or, okay, you made me feel this way. And even that has still been a challenge. I've grown into it, but it's a lot easier for me to have honest conversations with women. But when it comes to men, especially with boundaries being crossed and feeling violated, I freeze. It is so challenging for me to just be honest and say, I'm not ready. And I think that's because I don't want to be abandoned and I want to be chosen. And the attention, even if it's not the attention that I really want, feels good. And at least someone is, wanting to touch me and wanting to be with me. So that must mean that they actually care, right? And, the more that I've healed, I realize that that's completely inaccurate. And just because someone is sexually attracted to you does not mean that they're interested in you. And that's a very big difference. And so now I know that even though my trauma and the things that I went through kind of tell me that I need to be sexually active and super affectionate right away when I meet people, I know that I have to listen to my higher self, because that's the wounded child in me that's making that decision. That's the wounded child in me that's saying, we got to do this, because if we don't, we're going to be abandoned. And that's where the higher self, the adult me, has to step in and reparent and say, then let them go. If they are ready to run out the door because you are not ready to have sex or be intimate or hold hands or kiss 3 days in, 3 weeks in, 3 months in, let them go. Because from now on, I know that I have to build relationships based on an emotional connection. That is who I am. I've never been the type of person to just walk into a club or a building and see someone who's attractive and be like, yes, I have to have them right now. Come home with me right now. That has never been me. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I have to build an emotional connection with the person and feel safe in order for me to enjoy it, in order for me to open up. It takes me a little bit longer. I am not just all over the person, and instead of me shaming myself and feeling like there's something wrong with me, I'm honoring that now in myself and knowing that that is a boundary, and that should be normal. We shouldn't feel obligated to have sex and kiss or do anything physical until we're actually ready. And I'm just so grateful that I'm at that mindset right now and that I'm at that space right now. But I also know that it's easier said than done. It really is. And so I'm giving myself grace and compassion. And that's why I'm being very intentional about who I talk to and dating. And when a man is already putting out a lot of sexual innuendos when we're first talking and just going to the sexual part when we're just texting or talking, I'm immediately turned off. And that's a big red flag for me, to be honest. It's a big red flag when I meet somebody and 2 days in, they're already making jokes or trying to send pictures and trying to start sexting right away. That I'm just turned off. I'm not interested. And that is a red flag and a boundary within me. And so I'm really glad that I'm starting to see these signs now and that I'm starting to honor these boundaries within myself. But I know that once I do get into that committed relationship and it gets to the point, where obviously we're going to be intimate, it's going to be a real big, test for me to really honestly have like a full body fuck yes in order to be ready to do it. I need to be in my body, mind, and spirit, feel safe. I need to be in a position where I am in control, because I have been so out of control of my sexual experiences my entire life. And that is because of the lack of control that I had from my first experience where I was assaulted. So everything is coming together. All the pieces are making sense. And I just really have enjoyed these last almost 2.5 years of being celibate and really harnessing my energy. I have felt so alive and so powerful by not just having empty sex with people just to do it, just to appease other people. I've felt so good and so safe by, really making the choice and decision to stay celibate and to not have sex right now. And just continue exploring my own body and really understanding what I need, what I want, and working through the pain and the anger and the rage so that I don't project this onto the right partner. So I don't project this onto other people. I'm really looking forward to having safe, sober, enjoyable, pleasurable sex. And that's something I never thought was possible for me. As you know, if you listen to my last episode, Up until my last partner, I had never actually had an orgasm from penetration. And then with my last partner, I was able to have an orgasm from penetration because I was under the influence of cannabis. And while that was groundbreaking and just so amazing in itself, and it really let me know that my body is not broken, it has a lot to do with my mind. Now I want to heal the mind and the body together so that I can enjoy sex completely sober and feel all the things that I felt when I was under the influence, because I know that I'm capable physically. It's not a physiological thing, it's an emotional thing. And I think so many of us need to realize that and know that we are not broken, that our body is capable, but we have to feel safe and we have to feel respected. And we can only do that by feeling safe and respecting ourselves and being willing to speak our truth, even if that means someone walks away. Look at it as a awesome thing that happens. Look at it as a relief. If you set your boundaries and you want to wait and someone says, okay, I'm out of here, you just dodged a bullet. Look at it like that. Don't look at it like I have to do this because they need to choose me. No, you are choosing them and their character. And so if you are getting with somebody who is only looking at you because of what you can do physically, is that something long term? Is that something sustainable? Is that the person that you want to be with, that you want to marry, that you want to call your partner, your spouse, or your committed partner? Someone that doesn't respect your boundaries, someone that doesn't have empathy on where you've been and what's happened to you, and someone that doesn't have the patience and is only just ready to jump your bones. That says a lot about them and their emotional maturity as well. I'm not saying that sex is not important, but it's not everything. And it's very crucial that if you come from a background of having sexual trauma, that you honor that version of you, that you honor that inner child, that you honor yourself, and you're honest with the fact that it's going to look a little bit different. It's going to take a little bit longer. You're going to need a little bit more patience, and that is okay. You are worth the wait. It's worth the wait. Whew, that was a lot. That was a mouthful, but I've really been wanting to get that off my chest, and it's something that I feel so much more free now that I've talked about it and gotten it out there. And I know there may be some judgment and there may be people that have something to say and whatever, and I don't care. I feel so liberated because I know that this is my experience and my past, and the things that I looked up and used to look at is not a definition of who I am at my core. And it was coming from a wounded place. And so I hope that, you know, if you're feeling scared of speaking up because of judgment, that you take that same attitude and that same truth that what happened to you was very, very hurtful and violating. And it does a lot to your brain. Our physical assault is not just physical, it's mental, emotional, and spiritual. So have grace with yourself, have compassion, and know that your truth matters regardless of who approves of it or understands it or not. That's all I got for you guys today. Make sure you're following me on Instagram, TikTok, if you want more content, and also specifically TikTok. I go live on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and we really get down to the truth. It's nothing but the truth, the whole truth, and it is literally like therapy. It's therapy for me and therapy for my community. So if you're looking for some support, this is the kind of stuff that we talk about all the time. So head on over there and give me a follow and make sure you have the notifications on. Thank you for liking this video, sharing it, getting it out to other survivors who need someone, you know, to make them feel less alone. Someone who needs to hear this content. I really appreciate your support and I love ya. Bye.